investment company here in Clayton, and I have been a DBA for 5 years. And I went through Launch Code and then learned SQL under Kathy Kellenberger, and then went back and TA'd and then became the lead mentor for Launch Code. So it's kind of exciting. I love giving back because it changed my life, and I want to be able to help other people in that same journey. So that's my background. Personality-wise, I love finding ways to reduce risk and make things more secure. It's kind of my passion. And so, and my daughter might think permissions are boring, but I definitely do not. And so let me switch over to somewhere in here. And again, I used pictures from our trip to Yellowstone. So this is the Grand Tetons. So I wanted to talk about ways to make your database more secure. I know a lot of people like to just give out SA, sysadmin, everybody has all the rights, and that makes your life easier because you don't have to give permissions all the time. So true. However, it's also not secure. So whether it's a hacker getting in, or a disgruntled employee that already has all the rights, or most likely, in my opinion, is accidents, making mistakes. So if somebody thinks they're in a development environment, but they're actually in production, and they make a mistake. So if you give fewer permissions, that acts as guardrails against that. So yes, it definitely helps with, reducing your risk, cybersecurity risk with hackers and disgruntled employees. But on a day-to-day basis, it also helps you be less likely to mess things up badly. So I consider it one of my accomplishments at my job. When I first started, we have a developer who was the kind who had some elevated privileges and kind of liked having those elevated privileges, kind of used them in ways, and I, through the years, talked to him, and we're friends, and just being an evangelist for not having more permissions than you need to do your job so that you have those guardrails. And now he is a fan of the guardrails. And I consider that a big success story. Yes, sorry. Sure. Oh, sorry. I can do that. So that is my pitch for permissions. Now I also know that when I try to make the case for you to give those permissions, it's more work. And so I'm going to try to help find some ways to reduce that workload. So, if I'm going to ask you to do something, I'm going to try to help you do it in an easier way. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about getting the data. First off, when I first started at my company, my senior manager at the time, Clayton Hoyt, had written this process, this complicated SPROC, that would pull all of the production permissions every night. So we do that. We pull all of the production permissions every night. We have it in a table. We can slice and dice that information in many, many different ways. So I have, with his permission, I'm showing you his SPROC only, I streamlined it down and simplified it a bit. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'll show you in the demo time how to get that information and be able to put it in a table so that you can report on it and monitor it, etc. So this picture,
It's a bear.
I don't know if you can see it, but there's a bear, and Allison took this picture. So just saying, I hope you zoom. Did you zoom?
Yeah, I was like.
Okay, so we do a nightly process, pulls all this information, and then every Monday we would get a report with an attached Excel file. It's also dumped in a shared drive with all of the permissions for prod, with the idea that we, and I mean I, would go through all those permissions every Monday. I can assure you, sorry, Pam, I don't think I ever went through all those permissions exactly with that Excel file. So with my thinking of, yes, I want to monitor these permissions, but this is too much work. So I added a process that I'm going to show you tonight that just looks at the delta. It just looks at how the permissions changed from the day before. And so every morning now we get an email with an attached Excel that has like 5 or 6 lines in it. And that is so much easier, and it takes 30 seconds. I can review it, I can make sure those permissions didn't accidentally get deployed to master, because I know I'm not the only one that has accidentally deployed permissions to master instead of the database that they were supposed to be in. Or any kind of over permissioning that I see that, raises red flags. So that's a 30-second. So now I can say, yes, I monitor our permissions pretty tightly. Let's see. Getting the data. Here's another picture. Overwhelming to look at, the Delta reports. So I've gone through that. Okay, so it is possible for certain processes that DBAs may do, possibly, where the permissions on the server just get dropped. That is just a terrifying thing for it to happen, because then you start getting all the incidents and calls immediately. Also, well, yeah. So if you have, like I said, that we get the nightly permissions every night, and we have SSRS reports that monitor all of the permissions, but that's a clunky way of having to redo your permissions on a server or even a database. So there's that. Also, one of the jobs that I did quite often when I first started especially was restoring databases from prod down to either dev or test, lower environments, because people want, the latest and greatest, whatever prod is down. And so as part of that, I would script out the permissions, I would restore prod down, and then reapply the permissions, because I hope your permissions in dev or test, kind of those lower environments, are not the same as they are in production. So you can't just rely on restoring the production. And being a little bit overly careful, I was so worried that I would forget to do that step and then not have those permissions to reapply. And so I would script them out, and I would save it on my local hard drive, so that if I did make a mistake and have to go back, there would be something I could pull from. So those two things were the impetus of, so I wrote PowerShell scripts that go through and they take, using DBA tools, and they take backups of our permissions. We do backups for prod every night, and I take backups of those lower environments every week. So every weekend. And then I keep them for about 30 days. So you can adjust that, but that way it's one script. If you lose, for whatever reason, please don't ever let this happen. If you lose the permissions on the server, you could just run the script. So we'll show you that also. PowerShell scripts weekly, cleanup, 30 days. The scripts are very small. They don't take up much room at all, but you don't want, 3 years worth of backups. So you do need to have some kind of a cleanup process. So here I have the scripts for you on my GitHub. So if you just do info junkie one, you can find it. I have this 2 sprocs, the gathering permission sproc and the getting the delta sproc. So those are the 2 sprocs that I have. I have 2 PowerShell scripts that I'll show you in a minute. And then I didn't demo these, or I didn't include these in the GitHub, but we also have jobs and how, like for me here, I have 1 server, but at my work, we have many servers, as I'm sure a lot of you also have. So that you might have different processes that you use to gather the permissions from a wide variety of servers. And then SSRS reports, so many SSRS reports. My favorites are an SSRS report that pulls the information that from yesterday's permissions. So I could just look up, the login or whatever and pull that up. The other one is my Delta report, where you can put in any 2 dates and see what the difference is. So those I use all the time. So I unmuted myself, and I thought we would start by just going over the different components that I have, and then we'll go in depth and actually look at the scripts. So here in my server, this is my server I use for launch code. So you'll see like classwork. I have post-it replacement. That was the presentation I gave in October. And test login is one that is also for launch code. So if I were going to go in here and look, let's give permission. I'm going to make the login a SQL authenticated, but I normally would prefer not to do that. But for this purpose, it works better. So let's do this one. Call this person Allison swims with gators, because you talked about that picture from last time. And then we are going to give Allison permissions in classwork. We'll give her Reid. I prefer and really encourage people to do permissions, not read or write on the whole database, but specifically on the securable. So somebody might have permission to read one table that they need to have access to, but not the whole database. But there are times when those entire database rules are fine. Yes, obviously we don't want to not have passwords, so don't do like I just did, but I am going to for now. Okay, so Allison swims with gators. We just gave her that in the classwork. If I do another one, and this one, let's say, Allison, my favorite child.
We'll do Dr. Katie. She's going to hate me for that. Dr. Katie, and we are going to give her let's not do that. Let's give her Post-it replacement. Yes, I want to do that. And then we're actually just going to give her, I don't remember what my objects here were, so let's do browse a table. She only needs permissions to see the archive. She doesn't need the active one, so we're doing it that way. Okay. So, and I called this database Guarding the Keys, you know, guarding the keys to the kingdom, protecting the keys, the kingdom, etc. That was the theme I was going with. And inside here, I have a table called All the Permissions. And this isn't actually going to give anybody any permissions. It is where the gathering of the permissions will dump all the permissions. So you can have Reid on this database and it won't do any good except for to see who has what, which might be, that would be a security risk. So anyway, I wouldn't do that. But so I have the table, all the permissions, and then I have stored permissions, get permissions, and then the permissions delta, like the way I troubleshooted and was troubleshooting, and then I have one that works. I forgot to delete that one, sorry. So what we can do is we are going to, I already have it open. We are going to get, maybe, the permissions, and I really like whenever I have Sprox, I learned this from Clay, having a comment block that has the execute inside the comment block, because this was like one of my favorite things. When I was in launch code and I was doing my store procedures, Kathy was always so good at only highlighting what she wanted to execute, like every single time. And Ryan, my other mentor, was really good at always starting a new window, like new query for everything he wanted to do. I'm a bit lazy, and I would stick that execute statement down at the bottom with the idea that I would just highlight the store procedure and not include that execute statement in the store procedure. And multiple times I would include the store execute statement on accident. And I can assure you, even after my little lecture every semester in launch code, and I have given that lecture, I still have students do it every time, every semester, always. So the idea is if you put the execute statement inside your comment block, it's nice and easy for you. You can have your variables already there. If you have certain dates or certain things that you need to use for your parameters, you can have those up there, and it's nice and easy, and you don't accidentally get into a loop from the executing and bringing back weird data. So it's just one of my favorite things. So let's go ahead and execute this one. And this pulls back for one day. That's how I have it set up. You could change it if you wanted to run it every week instead of a day. You could just change that. But I have it set to run every day. So I'm going to execute. Oh, it helps to be connected. And it also helps to be in the right database. So let's try it again. So you can see that we have quite a bit of logging in here. I used the parameter to actually insert the data. I wasn't just bringing it back, which is test mode. So that's up there. The expected database count, I have 8. Cursor established, it goes through each database. And at the bottom, I love the logging. It'll even tell us records deleted, records inserted, final insert happened. 8 databases were expected to be reviewed and 8 were actually tested. So it has all that logging in there. I believe Katie works with, is that the logging that you and Clay did? Yes. So thank you, it's beautiful. And now if I go to all the permissions, and today's date is the 10th. Oh. Let's go down to the bottom and we have all of our permissions from the AdventureWorks, Pam from the office, that was from the October one, classwork, Allison's was with Gators. We have Data Reader, that's what we gave her. This one I think was from November, classwork. I have Sharon from accounting has select on that one table. And then where is Dr. Katie? Where are you? I did not pull up Dr. Katie. I will have to look into that because it should have pulled up Dr. Katie. So, and then I have these in here. I kept these in here. I normally would go ahead and not pull these out, but I just, because I'm using SQL authenticated, I wanted you to see that it does both Windows login and SQL logins so that it pulls both of those and tells you which one of those it is. Okay. So that is all the permissions. And then I have a Sprock looking at the Delta. Here, I have it set for 1 day. You could change that. And I have an SSRS report that where you could put the parameters in. So you could pick 2 days, whatever you want. I have it defaulted back to 3 months, so 1 quarter's worth. But this is the report that we get each day is 1 day back. So I'm going to do that. Execute that. Maybe. And be in the right. I make that mistake every single week at Launch Code. You would think I would learn. And here we have Allison Swims from Gator with Gators, and then this one I added as I was working last night. And Dr. Katie, let's find out. I don't understand why Dr. Katie didn't happen. Oh, can I tell the story of your cat?
Sure. Yeah.
So while I'm looking for Dr. Katie, I'm telling the story of her cat. So in October, when I was presenting, all of a sudden, somebody took over from the control from me, and it was Katie's cat, because she was doing deployments and had a separate laptop open, and the cat walked across and managed to hit the right keys and took control. I think that's hilarious.
He doesn't like when other people get attention.
Or maybe because we don't have any permissions for Katie. That's why. Okay. Sorry, Katie. So it works, it pulls up server level roles, server level securables. So if you have like view any database or something like that, it will pull that up. Pulls database roles and database securables. Yes. Oh, sorry. That's what I get. I'm used to walking around. Okay. So we'll look at scripts in a few minutes, but are there questions about what I've gone through so far? Or
Is it only SQL Server, or do you on-prem, or do you also do any cloud?
we're on-prem and we don't do any cloud yet. So, keyword. So, yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead and look at the table. Yes.
It's going to give you information too.
I'm sorry, say that again.
They'll give you the same kind of information that if you use Active Directory groups instead of individual.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's a good question. We use mostly groups at work and not individual logins or users, users, either one. And so, but it'll do both.
Do you have a method of knowing who's in those groups to manage that?
Not a really good one. Not a very good one. I do use a third-party product at times when we need to, but I'm much more likely just to look in Active Directory and just look it up because it's faster than the third-party product.
Have you used XP login info?
Not a lot. XP login info.
XP login info.
Does that pull back everybody, like I'll recurse through?
Yeah, if you pass it, well, it won't recurse through, but if you pass it a group, it'll tell you the immediate members, and then you can have you digest the output and then recursively call it if you want. XP underscore login, and so probably misspelled because it's Microsoft.
I find that for me, it's super easy just to look in Active Directory and do that. It's more the to help the database owners, like the people that are, and in fact, that's one of the things I've done with the Delta report is I have another report that is specific to where you can pass a parameter into who owns that database so that they can pull up the databases they own and see what permissions have changed. Because where I work, and I believe it's really important that if they own a database, that they know what's going on inside, so any permission changes they should be aware of. And we have a tracking system, blah, blah, blah.
And
But-
it's a department or something that owns the database instead of a person.
I say a person, it's a team, so whether it's the manager of that team or we're moving toward more of a product management status, so it's a group, we call them captain. So that person, I want it to be who does the approvals. So that's how I do it. So I like to have them be able to review. If it just goes to a team, I will never see any response. So, and that also depends on, that also depends on how that team works and if it's how large it is, et cetera, et cetera. So we try to be flexible with that, but for the most part, I want to know who the manager or whoever is the ultimate responsibility. So
Sometimes when there's a specific person, they leave, they don't tell you. It takes like 5 days before you know, or sometimes 5 months before you know.
Yes, you are correct. One of the things I do is I try to keep track of that. And it's always an ongoing process.
It becomes a full-time job for us to keep tracking people down. We're still the owner.
Yeah, so because we have teams, and I will go to the team and who the person is responsible, I have never felt like they, in any way, were not responsive to when questions. Sometimes teams want to split the ownership of a database, and I do not, that's just too confusing for the paper trail. So I don't like that at all. And I don't have ultimate say, but I would strongly recommend that they not do that. So I don't think we have anybody currently wanting to do that, but you know, it can be a bit of a political hot topic. Who owns a database? Okay, so here's the table that I created, all the permissions, and I have your typical permissions ID, the server name, the object name, the login name, the role name, group type, permission level. So whether that's database, object, or server, it brings that back. Date added, and then we recently added, and I really like this one, is disabled. So that it might tell me that that person, or more likely that service account might have a specific permission, but it has been disabled. And so then I know I don't have to go right away. And, you know, I want that piece of information there. So this is the table. The constraints are pretty obvious here. So it has the database, server, object. Okay. So let's go through this one, the gathering the permissions, guarding the keys with our parameters. And if you have questions as we go through it, I will try to answer them. I did not actually write this one. I've just tweaked it a lot. So I may or may not be able to answer the question. So you can see we have the logging. I really like the logging. And the reason why is because sometimes as it's going through, it can stop halfway through. And you would want to, like if there's a network timeout or something like that. And so you would want to be able to know what it did. I don't have it wrapped in a nice transaction. I don't think. So there. So just creates, we'll start off by creating our temp table, has all the same objects as the table. We'll pull up how many databases are on the server. I think there we go. How many databases are on the server so that we can compare the expected databases with how many we went through. You can see my troubleshooting. I have select star from commented out like throughout the whole thing. So I would say that in prod, we should take those out before it goes to prod, but I will have to admit that there are some select statements in most of my more complicated specs. Whoops. Sorry about that. So I have a cursor. We have a cursor that goes through the list of databases and pulls up the database permissions, whether it is on an object or whether it is a role. And here I have like only looking at the ones that are online and having a list of databases that you don't want to pull the permissions from. You could add to that as much as you want. Here's our cursor, and then it goes into the dynamic SQL, going through each database and pulling out the information. We include the orphan users. I'd like to know that. So you can see all the different types of permissions. We don't use most of these, but it's nice to pull them up. So I have those all listed for you. And here is where you were asking about deny. And I have the state as grant. So you could just comment that line out. I would think that that would work for you. And then more logging, where it'll log for each, like I showed you a minute ago, it'll show you a log for each database as it goes through. It's starting, it's finished, and then the catch. If there is an error on one of them, it'll go to the catch part of the try catch, and then we're out of our cursor. Once we're out of the cursor, it'll pick up the server rules. Ah. Here's the section pulling up the server rules, and then the next section pulls up the server securables. So that would be like view any database or, oh wow, there's a lot of them here. Alter any event session. Probably not giving you that one. And then here we have taken out the connect, but you could put that in if you wanted connect also. This next section is just the test mode. It's pulling back. If I have it in test mode, it'll give us the information, but it doesn't insert it into the table. And then if I gave it the parameter to perform direct insert, it inserts it into my all of permissions table, giving the server name and the date added, in addition to the information pulled. More logging, and then at the bottom has the logging whether or not, the databases, the expected number of databases and the actual number of databases match. So lots of logging. That's obviously grown with time, and I did kind of cut back some of it. I did try to simplify it a bit, and take out any specific to my company pieces. So, but it is obviously a Sprock that has been used for a very long time and grown as our needs changed. Like all of us have those kinds of Sprocks. So are there questions on that one before we move to the Delta one? Okay, let's look at the permissions Delta. This one's easier. So the two parameters, just the start date and the end date. And then here in my procedure test, I went ahead and have those parameters set so that it's nice and easy for troubleshooting, looking at it, but you can change those as you want. So the first half is we are just pulling from that table, all the permissions table, and looking at what was changed. And all of these in the first half were added. And then I have an accept. And whoops. The accept part is what has been dropped. So added, dropped. Are there any questions about that one? Okay. So the next thing I wanted to do was show you how I do the PowerShell, and I'm using the DBA Tools module. Should I tell them my lesson learned? When you use a module that you don't have control over, but somebody else does, and DBA Tools is great. I love it, but sometimes it can change over time. And so it's nice to have a, like, where you tell it what version to use. Just saying, little lesson learned the hard way. Okay, so the first one here is my PowerShell. That pulls up all the permissions. And obviously, you know how I love my comment blocks and my stored procedures. I'm going to use comment blocks in my PowerShell scripts also. So yay for comment blocks. And I don't have all the same information. It doesn't quite seem to work in the same way. What I do like to include, if possible, is I usually run the PowerShell scripts through a job on SQL Server, and I like to include in there maybe what job I'm using to run that PowerShell script, so that it just makes it easier to go back and forth. So I'm not looking like, what did I call that job again? Like that. So that's my little comment block. Import module, have the DBA tools. This one, there's different ways that you could do this, but what I did here was I have a text file where I list my servers that I want to go through. Let me see. So on my computer, I only have one. What do I call this? I don't remember where I put it. I probably put it on the C drive. It's easy to find. New. SQL backups. Permissions. There we go. So I have instances text. And in there, I just have the name of my server, because I only have one server. But you could list multiple servers. You can also have it pull from a table where you include servers. That way you don't have to try to remember to update your text file when you have a new server. But this is just how I I like to do it if I don't have a good table to pull from. Okay. So it's pulling from that, and then it's going to go loop through each server on my text file. So I only have one. First thing it does is it creates the needed folders. So that folder is the name of the server. And then the next folder that it may or may not need to create has the name of the current date. So if we look at my permissions folder, you can see I have the name of my server because I was working on it yesterday and over the weekend. And so, but if I go in there, I have yesterday's date, but I don't have today's date because I haven't run it yet today. Okay, so my script will go through and it will say, yes, we have that folder already, don't need to create that one, but we do need to create that one. So that's the first half. And then the second part is the DBA tools commandlet to export DBA user, and it's going to export it to a file that I have created the name for with the variables. And then it also has a separate script. So there's two SQL scripts, a separate one with the logins. So if we were going to run this, yes, I do. And it did not work. Oh dear, what did I do wrong? Well, it worked at home. Okay, well. I'll show you what it looks like, and then I'll see if I can play and get it to work. So inside each of the folders has the 2 SQL scripts, like I said, one with the logins, one with the database permissions. So if I open up the logins, it has each one on the server. I could run this whole script and have all the logins very, very quickly recreated. So it has all the if not exists, create, then create this, create that. Pan from the office, Sharon from accounting. And then the other one is the database permissions. And it has all of those. It includes like all your system ones, unless you exclude those purposely. I would just keep them in there. So it goes through, let's find AdventureWorks here. If not exists, create user for login, this, alter role, DB data reader. So because of we have put her in a role. And then again, Pam from the office, gave her DDL admin. She wanted DDL admin on post-it replacement, and because she is my boss. This was another one that I've done in my launch code class as an example. So you can go through those, and because I did this yesterday, it's not picking up the ones that I just did today. So I'll have to look at to see if there's some setting I have that why it didn't work. So are there questions?
I think your copy and paste may have gone astray. I wasn't sure about that.
Possibly. If not, probably. Let's try it again.
If you have that somewhere.
I can't get it to. So I'll tell you what happened. Sunday night, Sunday, I was working on it, and it upgraded to Windows 11. So all of a sudden, things that I use all the time and have been working for a long time, and I don't know all those systems. So it was getting things to work now with System 11 when we're not using that at work. I was like, what is this? So that's probably my copy and paste is not working correctly, because that's what I was struggling with. But we'll see. That's not even. Okay, now. So this process takes a little bit of time, which is why we run it at night, because we can. It's not, we're not actively using it 24/7, so we have a maintenance window, and then I lower environments on the weekend for that reason. It does take a little bit of time, but it's been so nice to have that backup of the permissions, not just like prod permissions where I could look at a report and actually look at them, but have that script that can easily be run and quickly run. We have started using this process or these backup scripts for a totally separate process also. So it's kind of nice to start being able to add on to it. Okay, so let's go and look at. So now we have today's date, and we have login permissions, and we have Allison swims with gators because we added that today. And then I'm not sure if it'll put Katie, I think, Dr. Katie. And then if we look at the database permissions, and it's going through all of the roles are automatically created, etc. It's can be really helpful. Pam from the office, there's Dr. Katie. She got Connect. That's all because, you know. Pam, and then Allison swims with gators is on there that we just did also. And then I have a cleanup script. And this one, I just have it set for 30 days. Again, depending on your environment and how often you run the backups, you can change that. So this one's really easy. It just goes through and pulls where object is less than 30 days. If I run it, it should delete all my backups. No, it will delete none of my backups because I did not start working on the presentation over 30 days ago. So I could, we could make it go one day. Let's see. Oh. And it didn't work. Maybe it's because I made it to, I wonder if I could do like half a day, because I ran it less than 24 hours. Yeah. Sorry, I can't demo that part, but I didn't start doing it early enough, so. Okay, are there questions? More questions? No questions? Oh, come on.
You capture server level permissions and roles as well?
Mhm.
You capture the SIDs and save them? No. Any particular reason why? I'm just curious why you're not.
Probably because I haven't had something happen where I wanted to capture that.
Okay.
That's all.
Sorry, can you just repeat the question?
Oh, sure. The question is whether we capture the SIDs and that gather all the data, Sprock, and I said no, and that's only, and the reasoning is because I haven't had something happen where I feel like I need to have those SIDs back captured, but yeah. now I'm going to go home and I'm going to work on the process, like with the going down the levels of the AD groups, that.
Next version.
I just tried that sort of procedure. It's cool. Yay.
Yeah, it is more fun to demo in a fully fledged server with all of the permissions and types, but yeah, no. I can't do that, so. Any more questions? Oh, come on. So I have questions for you. How many of you give permissions specifically on the secure roles, like I was talking about, versus database wide?
I have over 11,000 objects in my one database, so rarely will we do it at the object level. Sometimes we have a custom database, not the vendor database, but on custom database, we've been moving towards schemas and grading at the schema level. And sometimes on those, we will deny or grade on objects. But the huge 11,000 table, it's data reader, and we're trying to restrict, we're trying to do the audit of who has what. People change teams, and if they don't tell us, they still have permissions to read that database, even though they shouldn't.
So that gets, for us, that gets back to our AD groups, because they're based on roles. So if they move teams, that their permissions flow through the AD groups, ideally. And then I also have, like, if people offboard, I will go through, and I should say we go through and make sure that any individual permissions, then I only grant those on a temporary basis, but we still want to make sure that those are deleted out when they offboard or if they change departments. So we do that.
Right, so it's a good idea to look at what the AD team is doing, because, as far as we know, they don't have roles. It's just people make requests for access, it's vetted, they get added to an AD group, and then down the road they change job positions within the company, and we're not told that. That's why right now we're trying to do an audit of who's in the groups in just general, because we do have some single authenticated logins, that were maybe created for vendors, vendor accounts or vendor access. Are those still needed?
Right.
What access does it have? Are these people still needing to have access? And who are the managers or the people that can make the choice, that decision? Because we have patient information, and
right.
So we want to keep it
very,
secure.
very restricted.
Right, we want to keep it secure, and it originally was opened up to the world, and so now we're trying to handle on it.
That's a good point about, I want to say this to those of you who may be giving sysadmin to everybody. Once,
I don't know why you're looking at me.
once somebody has a lot of permissions, it's really hard to pull that back. And then we also have AD groups that have way too many people and roles and everything in them. And we have some that I just said, no more. We're not going to add this AD group anywhere else because we want to pull back. We want it to be flexible. It's very important that they have the access that they need to have for their jobs when they need it, and only that access. But it's hard.
If you have these AD groups, right, so you've got 20 people in it, maybe 10 of them need these objects, and 5 need a few more.
Yes, you are right.
Plus 5.
This is the story of my life, trying to get this, The team that does the AD groups for us, they sit really close. We have an open office and they sit next to us. And so it's easy to work with them, but they have different needs than we have. And so it does become a challenge. It is I think permissions is very, very challenging. It's easy if you just give everybody all the permissions. You obviously cannot.
We also have periods where they are doing upgrades. There's admins, software admins. For them to do an upgrade, they have to have SA.
So that's where
we grant them, they open a ticket, we grant them SA, they're supposed to tell me when they're done. And if not, the very next day, I go in and say, did it complete? Okay, and I remove the permissions. They don't understand, they have, they're the administrator group on the application server.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand why they can't be in the administrators group on the database server, and they don't understand why they can't permanently have SA rights. And my view was, you know, if they get SA rights, that's fine. We have no method of tracking who did what. You know, we're using AD groups. Well, who in the group did what? They mess something up, that's fine. It's 30 terabytes for a restore. I can go to a snapshot potentially and grab what up, but I have no way of knowing who did what, and I can't be held responsible for their actions.
So we have 2 sets of AD logins for the teams, like DBAs and the infrastructure team, that we can go in under a different context for those elevated permissions, and it's tied to the person's name. So it's not just SA, and then it's audited. So you might not know exactly what they've done, but you know when they've been in there and when they're not.
Yeah, I just told them that I wouldn't be responsible, and that kind of put a squash on it.
There you go.
People would love to do whatever they want, but if you ask them to take responsibility, everybody steps back.
That's true. That's a great way to turn it back on. Do you want that responsibility? Oh no. And really, I have been working with the developers, and they are really changing that mentality of wanting to be able to just do it immediately. They know that the DBA team is responsive if they need elevated permissions because of an incident. They just chat us or give us a call, and we will do it on a short-term temporary basis. So that has really helped.
It's changing the developers from a cowboy, cowgirl mentality where they have everything and they do their development in production to, taking a step back and, going with the least privileges.
Right. Working on it. I think for all of us, it's a process. I mean, so when I started, Clay was very much working to have what we call the Wild West days to make that less of Wild West days. And he did a lot, and then I've done more. So I think that will just continue. That process will continue. Trying to make it as easy on people as possible because it can be overwhelming. So any ways that if you know of things that you do to make that process easier, I'm all ears. I'd love to hear it. I will try to let you know what I have found to make it easier.
Two things. One, if you're going to programmatically digest that XP login info, watch for circular references from AD. Check. Ask me how I know.
Let me put that in my email that I'm sending.
Two is,
Can you send that to me? Really?
all of our software is homegrown. We've written it all ourselves. So on the database projects, we have created the database roles inside as part of the database project, and then grant permissions to the objects to those roles, and also inside project and the employee, you just have extra than does all. And then you, on the outside, you grant users access, memberships and roles, rather than to objects or anything like that. And that keeps roles from creeping in, and it keeps from scope creep, basically, or permissions creep. That's how we manage it on our side. Maybe won't let you do it quite that close. You can't have it like that, but you can have 4 layers, and you can have the groups be circular, the numbers jump each other. And if you just say, like, give me this list, and then say, all right, now all the groups in that list ask, their memberships, and then keep returning like that, you have to check to make sure, have I already checked this group specifically? So you don't go down that, and otherwise you just keep, it'll run forever. They may have fixed it later versions, maybe it's just fine. Well,
Or probably not.
probably not. It's a feature.
I should be quick, I said so much. Yeah, you got me.